Hey viewers! Hope you're all doing great. Before I start the story, tell me in the comments which country you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you enjoy my videos, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Listen the echo of footsteps in a long stone corridor. Cold, uneven floors whisper under worn leather soles. Somewhere far below, a door groans open and the faint scent of smoke and roasting meat creeps upward. It is dawn, sometime in the 13th century, and the castle is already awake. The sound of iron hinges, the ring of a hammer striking steel in the courtyard, the lowing of cattle being herded into the outer bailey. These are the first notes of life inside a medieval stronghold. Imagine standing there, the air sharp with damp chill, your breath visible in the torchlight. The thick walls around you, sometimes more than 10 feet deep, are both protection and prison. Inside them, hundreds of lives are lived according to rank, duty, and season. The Lord's chamber lies in the upper keep, high above the smells and noises of daily work. His bed is curtained with thick wool, his mattress filled with straw or feathers, depending on wealth. Beneath him, literally and socially, live his servants, his soldiers, and their families. Below them again are the animals, the kitchens, the stores of salted meat and sacks of grain that keep the entire household alive through long winters. In this world, salt is treasure. It is mined, traded, and guarded. To preserve meat or fish without it would be impossible, and the ability to do so separates survival from starvation. A single handful of salt could flavor weeks of meals, or buy favor in court. Sugar, by contrast, is exotic and scarce. It arrives in small, hard cones from the east, carried along trade routes that wind through Venice or Genoa before reaching northern Europe. Only the Lord's table will see it, often turned into spiced syrups or delicate pastes served at feasts. And bread, that simple, humble food, defines your place in this world. White, soft loaves for nobles, milled from the finest wheat flour and baked in the castle's stone oven. Coarse, dark loaves for the servants and soldiers, made from rye, barley, or oats. Even without seeing a man's clothing, you could know his status by the bread he eats. Now picture the great hall, the largest space in the castle and the heart of its life. It smells of wood smoke and mutton fat, of rushes trodden underfoot and newly cut herbs scattered to mask the stench. The walls are hung with tapestries that tell stories of battles, saints, or hunts, their colors dimmed by years of smoke. A huge fireplace dominates one end. Above it, the Lord's banner flutters slightly in the draught. At one long table sits the household, knights, stewards, chaplains, and guests of honor. At another, lower and plainer, the squires and servants eat. In some castles, the Lord eats apart, raised on a dais, while his people watch and serve. Silence is broken only by the murmur of voices, the clatter of trenchers, and the occasional bark of a dog waiting for scraps. The food itself is plain by modern taste but rich in labor. There are stews thickened with breadcrumbs, roasted fowl, boiled fish, cheese, and dried fruit. Spices, cinnamon, cloves, pepper, are rare, expensive, and used more to display wealth than to flavor. The cook, sweating near the hearth, commands a small army. Scullions to scrub, turnspits to handle the meat, pages to carry dishes up steep stairs. It is a world of constant work, every gesture trained by repetition. Beneath this rhythm lies a constant tension, between safety and siege, between feast and famine. The castle is both home and fortress. Its moat may be filled with water, or simply a dry ditch. Its drawbridge can be raised within moments. Archers practice in the yard, their bows strung and ready. In the armory, suits of mail hang beside swords that bear the marks of past battles. Yet most days, the fighting is with hunger, cold, and time itself. Beyond the walls, peasants labor in fields owned by the Lord. They are not part of the castle's daily life, but their work sustains it. Barley for ale, oats for the horses, wood for the fires, all flow inward from their toil. Inside, scribes record these deliveries in parchment rolls, written in Latin script under the watchful eye of the steward. Everything, from the number of sheep to the amount of flour ground in the mill, is counted. And then there is sound, constant layered sound. The bleating of goats, the clang of armor, the gossip of washerwomen near the well. The castle is never truly silent. Even at night, when torches dim and the great hall sleeps, there are guards pacing the battlements, their boots echoing against cold stone. Somewhere a dog growls in its sleep. If you were to walk through one of these corridors, you'd see how life is divided by doors and degrees of warmth. The kitchens glow with firelight, hot and loud. The chapel is cool and still, where the chaplain murmurs prayers for the souls of the dead. The storerooms smell of salted pork and drying herbs. The stables are alive with the sound of horses shifting in straw. Every room, every space, serves a purpose in this closed, self-sufficient world. The castle itself stands as a symbol of order, of hierarchy, of permanence. But beneath that stone certainty runs the quiet pulse of human life. Ambition, fatigue, laughter, fear. A maid hides a broken jug, afraid of her mistress's wrath. A squire dreams of earning his own coat of arms. The lord studies his maps, wondering if the next war will reach his walls. And through it all, the same truth remains. Salt is precious, sugar rare, bread eternal. But tonight, as the torches flicker low and the hall grows quiet, someone moves through the shadows. A figure unnoticed, carrying something small wrapped in cloth. No one sees where they go. No one asks. Only the soft echo of their steps fades into the dark corridors beneath the keep. Something is stirring in the castle. The first light of dawn slides through narrow arrow slits, cutting thin silver lines across the damp stone. The air smells faintly of soot and straw. Somewhere below, a bell tolls once, a hollow metallic sound that rolls through corridors and wakes the castle like a slow heartbeat. Morning has come. Before the nobles stir, the servants are already at work. The day in a medieval castle begins in darkness, when the stars are still visible beyond the battlements. Boys known as pages hurry barefoot through cold passageways, carrying buckets of water from the courtyard well. Their breath fogs in the air as they climb winding stairs to fill the basins in the lord's chamber. The water is icy. Even the faint splash echoes like a whisper. In the kitchens, the scullions, the lowest of the low, stir the ashes from last night's fire. Sparks leap up and vanish. The smell of smoke thickens as they blow into the embers until new flames flicker. A pot of porridge begins to simmer, made from oats ground in the castle mill. It is thin, barely salted, and meant for the servants' breakfast. The lord and lady, when they wake, will dine on something finer. Perhaps eggs, honeyed bread, and ale warmed over the hearth. Salted meat hangs from hooks overhead, swaying slightly in the draught. Nearby, large wooden barrels hold dried peas, grain, and ale. In one corner, a maid kneels beside a churn, rhythmically working the handle to turn yesterday's cream into butter. Every movement is habitual, each sound part of an ancient rhythm that keeps the castle alive. In another wing, near the chapel, the castle priest is awake too. His morning prayers echo softly in Latin, his voice carried through the cold stone corridors. He blesses the household, whether they are listening or not. Faith is a quiet constant here, as unchanging as the stones themselves. Soon the Lord's steward begins his round. He is the castle's unseen master of order, responsible for every loaf, every candle, every coin. Dressed in dark wool, with a scroll tucked under one arm, he checks the stores, marks quantities, and questions the cook. His words are calm but sharp. Shortages are not forgiven lightly. Winter stores must last until spring, and the balance between survival and scarcity is thin. In the courtyard below, stable hands lead the horses out to water. Their coats steam faintly in the cold air. The smith's hammer begins its steady rhythm again, shaping iron for hinges, tools, or the shoes of the lord's destrier. Dogs bark. Chickens flutter from their roosts. A woman crosses the yard with a basket of rushes to be scattered on the floor of the great hall. Inside that hall, the rushes from yesterday are swept away. They are stained, trampled, and scented with herbs that have long lost their fragrance. Fresh ones are laid down, mixed with rosemary, lavender, and mint. It gives the illusion of cleanliness, but beneath, the stone is forever dark with use. The walls bear marks of soot. The rafters hang with smoke. Soon the noble household begins to stir. The Lord's chamberlain enters quietly, pulling open the shutters to let in the pale morning light. The Lord lies beneath heavy woolen blankets, his breath steady, his sword beside him within arm's reach, habit, not paranoia. Even in times of peace, no man of rank sleeps unarmed. His lady wakes moments later, attended by her maids. They bring her garments, a linen shift, a wool kirtle, and an overdress trimmed with fur if the season is cold. The air in the chamber is freezing, so the maids move quickly, their fingers stiff with chill. Breakfast is not a lavish affair. The nobles eat in private, served on wooden trenchers. Ale replaces water, safer to drink and warming to the stomach. Bread, soft and white, lies beside salted butter and honey imported from distant hives. Occasionally, a dish of fruit preserved in syrup appears, a mark of luxury. In the corner, a minstrel tunes his small harp, ready to play a gentle tune should the Lord request it. Below, the servants gather for their meal. They sit on benches, their laughter low, their food rougher. Porridge, coarse bread, perhaps a scrap of cheese. They eat quickly, knowing the day's tasks will soon call them back. Some gossip about the latest news. A traveler's arrival, a broken gate hinge, a rumor of thieves in the forest. Others simply eat in silence, grateful for warmth. As the sun climbs higher, beams of light spill through the narrow windows, turning the dust in the air into gold. The courtyard fills with motion. The knights begin their training, squires at their side. The clang of metal on metal rings across the yard. Shields thud against wooden posts. Horses snort and stamp in the cold. Sweat glistens on foreheads despite the chill air. This is their duty, to remain ever ready, even when no war is near. Meanwhile, in the castle's small village beyond the walls, peasants bend over their plows. Their day began long before sunrise. They are bound to this land, tied to the Lord's service, paying their rent in labor or crops. Though they live outside, their work is as vital as the knight's sword. Without them the castle would starve. Inside the walls, the women of the household begin their own work. Some spin wool, others weave, mend, or embroider. The lady oversees it all, ensuring that clothing, banners, and linens are made and maintained. For noblewomen, domestic management is power. Quiet, invisible power, but essential. The steward may rule the stores, but the lady commands the household's rhythm. And then comes a moment that defines the castle's morning, the Lord's inspection. He descends from his chamber, his boots echoing against stone. Everyone straightens. The kitchen goes silent, the stable boys bow their heads, and the steward steps forward with his ledger. The Lord listens to the day's reports. A broken wall in the lower yard, a messenger delayed by rain, a shortage of barley. His responses are brief, practical. This is how authority sounds in a medieval castle. Measured, distant, unyielding. The bell rings again mid-morning. The hum of work resumes. The castle's heartbeat continues. Yet somewhere, deep within the undercroft, where the air smells of damp and stone, that same cloaked figure from the night before lingers in the shadows. Their hands tremble as they unwrap the small bundle they carried. Inside, something glints faintly. Not gold, not silver, but a small vial of salt, pure and white. In a world where salt means survival, even a handful can shift power. By the time the sun reaches its slow, pale height above the battlements, the castle hums with a kind of living rhythm. Steady, layered, constant. Every person within its thick walls has a task, and every sound, from the clatter of pails to the ring of a hammer, becomes part of a great mechanical heart that never stops beating. The morning chill has lifted slightly, replaced by the dry warmth of burning hearths and the smell of stewing meat. Smoke drifts through open windows, curling up into the pale sky. The kitchen, set apart from the great hall to reduce fire risk, is a world of its own, noisy, hot, and alive with movement. Here, cooks shout orders, and boys scurry across the stone floor with wooden platters. The great cauldrons bubble with pottage, a thick stew of barley, leeks, and bits of pork. In the corner, bread bakes in a stone oven, the air rich with its comforting scent. The baker works quickly, his face reddened by heat, his arms white with flour. The loaves he pulls out will soon be divided by rank, the fine white ones to the Lord's table, the rough brown to the servants. Nearby, a pot of salt is guarded like treasure. The steward measures it with precision, adding only enough to season the meal, never to waste. A pinch too much would be noted. A missing measure might mean suspicion. Salt preserves life, but it also reveals hierarchy. Only the highborn may taste it freely. Outside, the courtyard is alive with practice. Knights in padded gambesons spar with blunted swords. Their squires run drills, learning how to carry a shield, mount a horse in full armor, or tighten a saddle strap with one hand. The clang of metal echoes against the castle walls, rhythmic as bells. A boy trips, drops his practice blade, and earns a sharp rebuke. Training is harsh, for the cost of weakness on the battlefield is death. Near the stables, farriers work at a steady pace, reshaping iron shoes for the Lord's warhorses. Sparks fly each time the hammer meets the anvil, and the smell of hot metal fills the air. Horses stamp and snort, their breath steaming in the chill. Each animal is valuable. A destrier can cost more than a peasant's entire lifetime of earnings. In the gardens beyond the inner wall, women move quietly among rows of herbs and vegetables. They wear coarse linen dresses, aprons tied tight. Their hands are stained with soil. They pick leeks, onions, and parsley, whispering to each other as they work. The herb garden is a place of both nourishment and medicine. Here, mint for the stomach, sage for the throat, and rue for fevers. Every castle has such a space, tended with care and guarded from waste. The lady of the castle may visit these gardens too. Dressed in a mantle of soft wool, her veil pinned neatly under her chin, she inspects the herbs or speaks with the steward's wife about the week's stores. Her authority is quiet but absolute. Servants bow when she passes. She is the keeper of order within the walls, the balance between chaos and comfort. At last, the midday bell sounds. The hum of work slows. Men set down their tools, wipe sweat from their brows, and gather toward the hall. Servants hurry through corridors with trenchers, thick slices of stale bread that serve as plates. On these, the cooks will heap stews and meats, to be eaten with fingers or the tip of a knife. The great hall comes alive again. The long tables are set, the torches relit. The lord and lady take their places at the high table upon the dais, their seats elevated above the rest. The household below them waits in silence until the chaplain gives a short prayer. Only then does the eating begin. The food arrives in courses. A pottage of peas and bacon, roasted fowl with onions, cheese from the dairy, and ale poured from large earthen pitchers. There are no forks, only knives, spoons, and hands. The nobles eat slowly, speaking in measured tones. The servants eat quickly, knowing their duties resume soon after. Dogs circle the tables, catching what scraps fall. Above the din of eating and talking, a minstrel plays a slow tune on a lute. His fingers move delicately across the strings. The melody drifts through the hall, rising above the crackle of fire and laughter. It is a reminder that even within walls built for war, life seeks beauty. Occasionally, a messenger arrives, mud-stained from travel. He bows low and presents a sealed parchment. The lord breaks the wax, reads in silence, and folds it again without expression. News travels slowly in this age, and often it brings more worry than comfort. A neighboring lord may demand tribute. A distant cousin may call for aid. The castle's peace always stands on uncertain ground. After the meal, the tables are cleared. The scraps are gathered for the dogs or tossed into the midden. The trenchers, soaked with broth and grease, are sometimes given to the poor at the gate, who wait each day for such mercy. Waste is rare, hunger too common. The afternoon brings division again. The lord retires to his solar, a smaller, warmer chamber above the hall, to meet his bailiff or read accounts. The steward brings parchment, quills, and a small chest of coins. They speak of rents, of the coming harvest, of repairs to the walls. Money is counted in marks and shillings, and each coin bears the stamp of a distant king. In another room, the lady sits with her embroidery frame, her maids beside her. Colored threads spill from baskets, crimson, gold, green. Their laughter is soft, respectful. They talk of cloth and color, of weddings and births, of things that seem small but bind the rhythm of the castle's private life. Down below, in the laundry room near the river gate, other women labor silently, scrubbing tunics in cold water. Their knuckles are red and raw. Wet cloth slaps against stone. The air smells of lye and smoke. For every noble garment displayed in the hall, there are 10 rough hands that keep it clean. The sun begins its slow descent, and the light in the corridors turns amber. Dust floats like tiny sparks. The castle exhales, tired but still moving. Always moving. The walls, the stone, the smoke, they all hold the weight of centuries. And far below, in the dark beneath the cellars, that same small vial of salt rests in a shadowed hand. The figure turns it slowly, watching the way it catches what little light seeps through the cracks. They listen to the laughter above, to the sound of spoons and voices, and their jaw tightens. For them, salt is not a seasoning. It is freedom and debt and danger. The sun drifts lower, stretching long, golden fingers across the courtyard walls. The day's work softens but never stops. In a castle, there is no true stillness, only the changing rhythm of labor. What morning began with fire and sound now settles into steady motion. Quieter, slower, but always precise. The servants move through the corridors like veins of the living stone. The steward's voice echoes faintly as he calls for the tallies of the afternoon. How many barrels of ale remain? How much grain is ground? Whether the smith has finished repairing the gate hinge? Each answer is noted with a stroke of quill against parchment. In a place ruled by rank and order, record is power. In the armory, a squire polishes a set of mail. The metallic ring of his cloth on steel repeats endlessly, soothing in its monotony. The armor must always be clean, for rust is the slow enemy. Beside him, another boy oils a sword, running his thumb along its edge, whispering as if the blade itself were listening. Weapons are named here, treated with reverence, almost faith. The knights have finished their drills, their arms heavy from training. Now they gather in the solar, the sunlight falling across their faces. They remove their gloves and talk quietly, not of battle, but of land, of horses, of tournaments that might come in spring. The Lord listens, saying little, his gaze often fixed on the window where the fields beyond shimmer under the pale light. His mind is on the harvest, on the taxes owed to the crown, on the peace that feels too fragile to last. Below, in the lower bailey, the blacksmith and his apprentice work near the forge. The rhythmic clang of hammer against anvil marks time. Sparks burst like fireflies with each strike, the metal slowly shaping into a new plow blade or perhaps a spearhead. Heat warps the air around them. Sweat runs down their faces. These men are the unseen craftsmen of survival. Their work holds the walls together, defends the gates, feeds the people. In another corner, washerwomen hang heavy sheets on ropes strung between beams. The fabric drips, water pooling on the stone. They speak in low voices about their lives. One's husband away at war, another's child sick with fever. Their hands move even as they speak, scrubbing, wringing, lifting. Every breath is measured between tasks. The chapel bell rings once. A thin sound echoing through the corridors. It calls to the devout, a reminder of the passing hour, of prayer, of humility. Some pause to cross themselves. Others continue their work, their faith bound more to survival than ritual. The chaplain lights candles along the altar, their flames flickering against old icons. The scent of wax mixes with damp stone. In the great hall, the air is cooler now. Servants sweep the rushes again, collecting stray bones and spilled ale from the meal. Fresh herbs, sage, mint, sweet woodruff, are scattered to mask the day's scents. Tapestries hang limp, Their threads faded from years of smoke. Each tells a story. Battles fought, hunts completed, saints revered. They are the memory of the castle, woven in wool and time. The lady descends from her solar. Her footsteps are soft but commanding. She inspects the hall, the servants, the tablecloths newly spread for the evening meal. Her eye misses nothing. A corner uncleaned, a cup unpolished. These things speak of disorder, and disorder is danger. She gives quiet orders, and the staff moves like water before her. Outside, the guards change their watch. 2 men climb the stone steps to the battlements, their cloaks whipping in the wind. From up there, the world stretches far and empty. Rolling fields, a thin road leading to the distant village, the dark line of forest beyond. The wind bites at their faces. One man squints toward the horizon where a thin column of smoke rises. Perhaps a farmer's hearth. Or something else. They exchange no words, but both remember the tales of raids, of bandits, of sudden fire. The castle stands in peace, but peace is never certain. Back below, the kitchens stir again. Fires are stoked, pots filled. The smell of roasting meat drifts through the corridors. The cook shouts, demanding more wood for the hearth, more ale for the sauces. His helpers rush to obey. They know that the evening meal must be perfect, not for taste, but for honor. The food is a mirror of the Lord's strength, his ability to provide. Among the workers, laughter rises occasionally. A boy spills water and curses softly. A girl teases him and earns a grin. For all the weight of duty and stone, life here has moments of warmth. They share stolen smiles, whispers in corners, brief sparks of humanity beneath the gaze of hierarchy. As the afternoon wanes, shadows stretch across the courtyard. The sky beyond the towers shifts from pale gold to bruised purple. Torches are lit one by one, their flames dancing against the growing dark. The castle glows from within, a small island of light against the encroaching night. But not everyone prepares for the evening openly. Beneath the kitchens, in the cool dark of the cellars, that same cloaked figure returns. The small vial of salt is now hidden beneath loose boards. They glance around, no one sees. Their breath is shallow, their hands steady despite the risk. The salt glimmers faintly in the lantern light. It is not stolen for hunger. It is not hidden for trade. It is kept for something else. Something that must remain unseen, at least for now. Above, the Lord sits in his chamber, unaware. He listens to the wind against the shutters, the muffled laughter of servants, the faint cry of a night bird beyond the walls. He does not yet know that something small and white, as simple as salt, will one day change everything within these stones. The sun disappears. The torches burn. Castle waits. The day sighs into dusk. From the high towers, the last light of the sun fades behind distant hills, spilling copper and violet streaks across the horizon. A faint wind curls around the battlements, carrying the scent of earth and smoke. The castle, once loud and full of motion, begins to draw inward. The world outside dims, but within these thick walls, a second life begins. In the kitchens, the evening fire burns hot. Shadows of cooks and scullions dance against the walls as they rush to prepare the night's meal. The room glows orange, its air heavy with heat and smell. Roasting fowl, boiling broth, baked bread, the faint sweetness of mead. Sparks rise, the hiss of dripping fat punctuating the hum of voices. Pots are lifted, ladles dipped, and the sound of wooden spoons against metal rings like a heartbeat. A small boy, barely 10, fans the hearth with aching arms. His hands are rough from labor, his eyes fixed on the flames as if hypnotized. Beside him, the head cook, a stout woman with sleeves rolled to her elbows, tastes from a spoon, frowns, and reaches for the salt jar. She hesitates, it is nearly empty. Her lips tighten. "Tell the steward," she mutters. "No more than a pinch remains." The boy nods, scurries off. The cook sets the jar down carefully, glancing at it again as though it were gold. Salt is not merely flavor here. It is preservation, survival, and wealth. The dwindling supply is a quiet warning. Upstairs in the great hall, servants move like a tide, laying the long wooden tables. Candles are placed at even intervals, their flames trembling in the faint draughts that slip between stones. The air glows softly, golden and uneven. Rushes have been freshly laid again, scented with herbs that release their perfume underfoot. Lavender, sage, and marjoram. The Lord enters, his cloak trailing behind him. Conversation falls silent. He crosses the hall slowly, his expression unreadable, his steps deliberate. The lady follows a few moments later, graceful, veiled, her gown's hem whispering against the floor. Behind her, the steward stands waiting, his ledger pressed against his chest. They sit upon the dais, their seats elevated. The chaplain murmurs a prayer of thanks, his voice echoing faintly from the high-beamed ceiling. When he finishes, the servants begin to move again. Platters of food appear, roasted venison, coarse loaves of bread, cheese, bowls of thick pottage. The smell of garlic and herbs fills the air. At the lower tables, knights and guests laugh softly. Their voices carry upward, mingling with the crackle of fire. Goblets of ale and wine pass from hand to hand. Trenchers of bread soak in the juices of meat. The Lord eats with calm dignity, occasionally speaking to the steward beside him. "Send word to the miller," he says quietly. "His flour is coarse this week." The steward bows his head. At the far end of the hall, the servants eat their share. What remains after the upper tables have taken theirs? They do not complain. Hunger sharpens gratitude. Some sneak small bites of roasted meat when the overseer's back is turned, chewing quickly, eyes flicking toward the door. The minstrel begins to play. His lute hums softly, a melancholy tune that floats through the hall like smoke. The melody is ancient, older than memory. For a moment, even the soldiers pause, their laughter fading as they listen. The song speaks of battles long past, of loyalty and loss, of castles like this one standing proud against the night. When the meal ends, the servants clear the tables. Bones and crumbs are gathered into baskets. Cups are washed in basins of water that turn cloudy and gray. Dogs lick the floor beneath the benches. The hall grows quieter, the candlelight dimming. In the solar above, the lord and lady sit together near the fire. A chessboard rests between them, the carved pieces pale and dark. They play slowly, thoughtfully, each move a small reflection of power and patience. The lady glances toward her husband. "The stores grow thin," she says softly, "and winter still lingers." He nods but does not look up. "The salt trader from Bristol is late," he replies. "If he does not come before the snows, we'll ration what remains." His tone is calm, but his hand tightens on the chess piece. Outside, the wind rises. The guards on the battlements pull their cloaks tighter. Torches sputter in the cold. One man stamps his feet, blowing on his hands. "Feels colder tonight," he mutters. His companion peers into the darkness below. Only the faint flicker of the village hearths can be seen. "Colder," he agrees, "and too quiet." Far below, in the lower chambers near the storerooms, the boy from the kitchen searches for the steward. The air down here is thick still. Rows of barrels line the walls. Sacks of grain stand piled high. The flickering light from his lantern throws long shadows that stretch like reaching arms. He pauses, thinking he hears something. A faint rustle, the soft scrape of movement. "Hello," he whispers. No answer. Only the dripping of water from the stones above. He turns, ready to leave, and catches sight of a small gap in the floorboards. Something glints faintly there. He crouches, lifts the loose plank and gasps. A vial of salt, pure white and untouched. He hesitates, eyes wide. Then, footsteps echo in the corridor behind him. He freezes, clutching the lantern. A figure emerges from the dark. Cloaked, silent, their face hidden. For a heartbeat, neither moves. "Who are you?" the boy breathes. The figure steps closer, voice low and calm. "No one you should remember." The boy stumbles back, and the lantern shakes in his hand. The light catches the edge of the stranger's sleeve, embroidered with a faint symbol, the mark of a trader's guild. Before he can speak again, the stranger blows out the flame. Darkness swallows the chamber. Above, the great hall hums with fading laughter, oblivious. The lord takes another slow move on the chessboard, his eyes on the queen. The lady looks toward the shuttered window, hearing only the wind. Far below, something ancient begins to stir. Not a ghost, not a legend, but a secret bound in trade, in salt, and in silence. The castle at night is another world. By day, it roars with life. Footsteps, commands, and metal striking metal. But when darkness settles, it breathes differently. The air grows still, and the stones seem to listen. From the towers to the lowest cellars, every corner whispers. The torches along the corridors flicker weakly, their flames bending with each breath of cold air that snakes through the cracks in the walls. Guards walk in pairs, their boots striking the flagstones with hollow rhythm. They speak little. A single torch casts their shadows long and broken along the walls, ghostly outlines moving through an endless maze. In the chapel, a candle burns before the altar, its light trembling on the face of the carved saints. The chaplain kneels alone, his lips moving silently. The prayer is not for the souls of men tonight, but for protection. From hunger, from deceit, from the darkness that seems thicker than usual. Beyond the chapel, in the upper chambers, the castle's lord sleeps lightly. His dreams are sharp and restless. Horses without riders, empty granaries, storms at sea. He wakes once, listening to the faint sound of the wind pressing against the shutters. Something in it feels different. The fire in his hearth burns low, a thin red glow like the last heartbeat of the day. Below him, in the servants' quarters, the boy from the kitchen lies awake. He can still smell the salt that had spilled from the vial. Faint, clean, metallic. He had hidden it beneath his straw mattress before anyone saw. But the stranger's words echo in his head. No one you should remember. He wonders who that man was, and why he had been hiding salt in the floor. The boy rolls onto his side, facing the wall. Sleep does not come easily. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaks, and footsteps pass by. In the stables, the horses shift restlessly. One of them stamps and snorts, tossing its head. The stable hand rises from his stool, muttering, "Easy, girl, easy." He pats the animal's neck, his hand brushing against the cold metal of the bridle. The mare's ears flick back toward the outer gate, listening. From beyond the curtain wall, a faint sound hums, wheels on gravel, then a low whistle. The guard above calls out, "Who goes there?" His voice carries into the stillness. A reply comes, muffled but calm. "Trader's cart from Bristol. Late arrival." The guard frowns. "At this hour." The cart rolls forward. 2 mules, 1 man. The lantern light from the gatehouse falls across the man's face. Shadowed, his hood drawn low. Behind him, under the canvas, are barrels. The seal stamped on the wood bears the mark of the Salt Guild. The captain of the watch appears. "You'll unload at dawn," he says sharply. The trader bows slightly. "As you command." His voice is soft but carries an odd authority, as though he knows more than he should. The captain watches him go, a chill creeping up his spine. Later, as the night deepens, the moon rises over the castle, pale, distant, and watchful. Its light spills across the courtyard, painting silver on the cobblestones. The trader's cart sits silent under its glow. One of the barrels shifts. In the kitchen passage, the boy slips out of his bed, barefoot, careful not to wake the others. He holds the small lantern close, shielding it with his hand. The secret under his mattress has weighed too heavily on him. He needs to know. He follows the stair down toward the storerooms, where shadows hang thick as smoke. The lantern light wavers over the stones. When he reaches the bottom, he freezes. The loose floorboard, the one he had lifted, is gone. The plank has been replaced, nailed down. He kneels, pressing his fingers along the edge. No gap remains, but a faint trace of salt dust lingers on the stone. Someone has been here. Suddenly, a voice comes from behind him. You should not be here. He turns sharply. The steward stands in the doorway, holding a candle. His face is calm but unreadable, his eyes steady. I came for the cook's jar. The boy stammers. She said there was salt. There is no salt, the steward interrupts. His voice is quiet, too even. Go back to your bed. The boy nods, stepping backward. The steward watches him go until his footsteps fade, then kneels by the floorboard. He runs a hand over it, tracing the grain of the wood. His expression changes, not fear, not guilt, but something colder. In the courtyard, the wind rises again. The torches gutter. From the guard post, one man peers toward the cart. Strange, he murmurs. Did you see it move? No, the other answers. Might be the wind. But the first guard keeps watching. In the moonlight, the trader's hooded figure stands beside the cart, speaking in low tones to someone unseen. Their voices are too soft to catch, but one word drifts up through the still air. Shipment. A metallic clink follows, then silence. Inside the great hall, all candles have been extinguished. The vast chamber lies in darkness, save for the faint shimmer of dying embers. Above, the carved shields and banners hang motionless. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of smoke and tallow. Somewhere deep within the castle, a door opens with a whisper of stone against stone. A secret passage. Narrow, old, forgotten. Two figures move through it, their steps slow and deliberate. One carries a small chest, the other a lantern covered with black cloth. When they emerge, they are in the cellars again, the same place the boy had found the vial. The first figure sets down the chest. The other removes the cloth, and light spills over the barrels stacked neatly against the wall. Tonight it goes north, one says. And if the Lord discovers, he will not. Not while his steward keeps his accounts clean. The lantern flickers. Dust motes spin like tiny sparks in the air. The chest opens with a soft click. Inside, bars of salt gleam pale as bone. The trader's emblem is carved on each one. For a moment, both men are silent. The smell of salt, sharp and pure, fills the air. Then a voice speaks quietly from the shadows. You've done this before. Both men turn sharply. The boy stands there, trembling, lantern in hand. The light catches the edge of his frightened face. The steward steps forward. You should not have come. I saw you, the boy whispers. You're stealing from the castle. The steward's eyes narrow, and the trader beside him shifts slightly, his hand moving toward his belt. Before anyone speaks again, a bell rings above, one long, heavy toll. The sound rolls through the stone halls, breaking the silence of the night. The steward's face hardens. They've seen us. The trader snuffs the lantern. Darkness swallows the cellar. The boy feels a hand grab his arm, then the cold bite of night air as he's dragged toward the hidden passage. The castle above stirs. Guards shouting, dogs barking, doors slamming open. But below, where salt and secrets lie buried, the truth begins to move. The castle wakes to chaos. The sound of the alarm bell swells through every corridor, a deep iron voice that breaks sleep and peace alike. Footsteps thunder on stone as guards run to their posts. Torches are lit hastily, and doors swing wide. Shadows dart across walls like frightened spirits. The Lord, half-dressed, bursts from his chamber. What is it? He demands, his breath white in the chill air. The captain of the guard bows hurriedly, words stumbling from his mouth. Movement in the cellars, my lord. We found the steward's key missing. The northern gate was unbarred. The lord's face tightens. Bring every man to the yard. No one leaves. The order spreads fast. Gates slam shut, the chains of the portcullis rattling as it drops. In the courtyard, the blacksmith and his apprentices are dragged from their beds to stand in the cold. Kitchen maids clutch shawls to their shoulders, wide-eyed. The cook mutters prayers under his breath. Every face is drawn by the same fear, the fear of being blamed. Down in the dark cellars, the secret passage yawns open. The boy stumbles through it, dragged by the traitor's gloved hand. Behind them, the steward hurries, holding a small torch whose flame sputters with each breath of the tunnel's damp air. The walls are narrow, the ceiling low. Roots hang from the earth above like black veins. "Keep moving," the traitor hisses. "We must reach the river before dawn." The boy trips, his shoulder scraping against the rough stone. "Why are you doing this?" he gasps. The steward's voice comes from behind him, low and calm. "Because this castle has debts, boy. Because the crown demands gold we do not have. And salt is worth gold." He says the word with a kind of reverence. The boy glances at the chest one of the men carries. Small, heavy, bound with iron. He knows now what lies within. Behind them, faintly, comes the sound of pursuit, shouts, the distant clang of weapons. The guards have found the open door. In the courtyard above, the Lord mounts his horse. His cloak flares behind him as he shouts orders. "Seal the lower gate. Check every cart, every barrel." His eyes sweep over the gathered servants. Where is the steward? No one answers. Silence falls. Heavy, dangerous. The cook swallows hard. The washerwoman glances at the ground. Finally, a stable hand speaks. "He was last seen near the cellars, my lord." The lord's jaw tightens. "Then that's where we start." Torches descend into the lower halls. The air grows thick with smoke and tension. Every shadow seems alive. The guards move cautiously, swords drawn. They find the secret door. Old, its hinges hidden behind wine barrels. The captain runs his hand over the frame. "It's been used before," he murmurs. He gestures to two men. "With me." The passage twists and narrows, leading deeper underground. The torchlight barely reaches the end. One guard coughs, the air damp and close. The captain keeps his sword raised, listening. Ahead he hears faint footsteps. 3, maybe 4 people. Then silence. At the tunnel's exit, the traitor stops. A wooden ladder leads upward to a trapdoor. Beyond it lies the outer moat and the frozen marsh beyond the castle walls. He pushes the lid slowly, just enough to see the pale glimmer of moonlight. "Clear," he whispers. The steward climbs after him, pulling the chest. The boy hesitates. "Please," he says. "Let me go. I won't tell anyone." The steward looks at him. Not cruelly, not kindly. "You've already told enough." Then he reaches for the boy's arm. But a sound cuts through the night. A horn, sharp and echoing from the battlements above. The guards have seen movement. The traitor curses, shoving the trapdoor open fully. Cold air rushes in, smelling of wet earth and iron. They climb out one by one. The moon hangs low, veiled by clouds. Frost crunches underfoot. The marsh glows faintly in the pale light, mist curling over it like breath. The first arrow lands near their feet, hissing into the ground. Then another. The traitor drops to one knee, shouting, "Run!" The steward drags the chest toward the edge of the moat. The boy follows, stumbling through reeds. Behind them the horn sounds again, closer now. The captain's voice carries through the wind. "Yield! In the name of the Lord, yield!" The traitor stops suddenly. "No," he mutters. "Not after all this." He pulls a dagger from his belt. The blade catches the moonlight. The steward turns sharply. "Don't be a fool. We can still." He doesn't finish. The traitor lunges forward, stabbing the chest's lock open. Inside, the bars of salt gleam, white, crystalline, shining like captured moonlight. He grabs one, breaking it in half. "Proof," he says. "If they catch me, they'll know nothing. The trail ends here." He throws the rest into the marsh. The bars splash, sink slowly, melting into the cold black water. The steward stares, horrified. "You've doomed us." "No," the traitor replies quietly. "I've freed us." The boy cries out as the first guard bursts from the tunnel behind them. There, Stop! The chase is quick, brutal. Steel flashes, breath turns to mist. The steward is seized, thrown to the ground. The traitor fights. 2 guards fall before they bring him down. His hood falls away, revealing a scarred face and cold eyes. The Lord rides up moments later, his horse snorting, its hooves sinking in the mud. He looks down at the 2 men. "What have you done?" he asks, voice heavy. The steward's face glistens with sweat. "I did it for you, my lord. For the debts, for the taxes. You would not understand." The Lord dismounts slowly. "I understand betrayal," he says. "And I understand theft. Salt of all things. Salt from my own table." He gestures to the guards. "Chain them." The boy stands frozen, the cold biting through his thin clothes. The Lord turns to him. "You," he says softly. "You saw this." The boy nods. "Then you'll remember," the Lord says. "You'll remember what happens to those who turn the castle's heart to rot." By dawn, the courtyard holds silence again. The traitors are gone, the boy confined to the kitchens. The barrels of salt are gone too, vanished into the marsh. The air carries the faint smell of smoke, of something burnt away but not forgotten. That morning the castle eats bread without salt. Taste is bitter. The servants notice but say nothing. Only the Lord knows the full weight of that absence, the price of purity lost beneath the earth. And yet, as the day begins, a rumor drifts among the workers, that the marsh has turned white overnight, as if the earth itself had remembered the salt. The dawn after betrayal comes quietly, but it carries the kind of silence that does not belong to peace. The castle walls, once echoing with the clang of hammers and chatter of servants, now seem to hold their breath. The early mist clings to the courtyard, wrapping the stones in a soft grey shroud. Somewhere beyond the walls, a crow calls once, sharp and lonely, before the air falls still again. The gates remain barred. No traders come. No carts rattle across the drawbridge. The guards stand double watch, their faces pale and sleepless. Every sound, a footstep, a door creak, the wind sighing through an arrow slit, seems to carry weight. In the great hall, the hearth burns low. The Lord sits in his chair at the dais, unmoving, his hands clasped before him. He has not slept. Before him lie 2 objects, the steward's seal ring and a half-melted bar of salt. The ring had been taken from the prisoner's hand before dawn, the salt found in the marsh, washed up like a secret refusing burial. A knock sounds at the door. The captain of the guard enters, bowing low. "My lord, the traitor is dead. He took his own life in the cell." The steward. He hesitates. The steward begs an audience before he is sent to the crown's justice. The Lord's voice is quiet, steady. "Bring him." Moments later, the steward is led in. His wrists are bound, his clothes torn and stained with mud. Yet he walks upright, his face calm. When he stands before the Lord, he bows deeply. Not in apology, but in a gesture that feels almost like habit, as though he still clings to the order that ruled his life. "You served me for 20 years, the Lord says. "Why?" The steward raises his head. "Because service is survival, my lord. But loyalty must be earned. You have not paid your men in 2 seasons. The crown demands more coin than we have. Salt was gold in another form. I only sought to preserve this place." The Lord studies him. "You preserved nothing. You broke the bond that holds this castle, trust." The steward's expression does not change. Trust doesn't fill the granaries. The silence between them stretches long, like a blade balanced on edge. Then the Lord nods to the guards. "Take him away." As they lead him out, the steward turns once more, his voice low but clear. "You may kill the man, my lord, but not the reason." When the heavy door closes, the Lord exhales slowly, as though the act of breathing itself costs strength. Later he climbs the battlements alone. The morning sun cuts through the fog, revealing the fields beyond, the farmlands that feed his people, the frozen marsh where the salt was lost. From this height, everything looks peaceful, but he knows how easily peace cracks. Below, the servants begin their work again, but their movements are slower, quieter. The kitchen maids scrub the flagstones in silence. The cook stirs porridge with a wooden spoon, the steam rising like ghostly fingers. No one speaks of what happened, but everyone knows. The boy works beside the hearth, eyes down, hands red from scalding water. He has not spoken since the night of the capture. The cook glances at him now and then, wanting to ask questions but too afraid of what answers might come. When the Lord enters the kitchen later that morning, the workers fall still. Even the fire seems to hush. He walks straight to the boy and kneels so that their eyes meet. "You saw what others could not," he says softly. "You spoke when it was dangerous. That is courage." The boy shakes his head. "I was afraid." The Lord's lips twitch, almost a smile. Fear and courage are the same thing, only faced from different sides. He rises, turning to the others. "From this day, salt is to be rationed and kept in my chamber. No one touches it without leave. Bread will be coarse until the stores are renewed. We will live as one house again, clean, honest, and watchful." He leaves, and only after the door closes do the servants breathe again. In the courtyard, 2 gallows have been built. The steward stands upon one platform, his face still calm. The villagers and castle folk gather at a distance, watching in uneasy silence. Justice in their world is public. It is meant to be remembered. The priest reads the rites. The steward listens without expression. When the last words fade, he speaks, not to the crowd, but softly to the boy standing near the gate. "Guard what you see," he says. "Truth hides longer than sin." The rope tightens. The body falls. The crowd disperses. Life, cruelly steady, begins again. By noon, the sun shines fully over the walls, and the castle resumes its rhythm. The blacksmith returns to his forge. The laundry women hang white sheets that flap like banners of surrender. The air smells of ash and soap and fear. Yet under that routine something has changed. The servants look at one another differently now. Not with trust, but with quiet calculation. Each wonders who knew, who stayed silent, who might be next. That afternoon, the boy carries a message to the chapel. The chaplain kneels in prayer, his voice murmuring like water. On the altar, he has placed a bowl of pure salt, a rare act of devotion. The boy sets the parchment down and hesitates. "Father," he says softly, "why salt? Why not bread or wine?" The chaplain opens his eyes. "Because salt does not rot, child. Preserves what is pure. It reminds us that truth, once buried, waits for the tide to return." The boy nods slowly, his eyes drawn to the small grains sparkling in the light. As dusk falls again, the castle grows quiet. The fires burn low, and the sky turns to violet. The boy walks along the wall, looking out at the marsh where the water gleams faintly. For a moment, it seems to shimmer white, as though the lost salt still sleeps beneath the surface, waiting for another night to rise. In the stillness, a faint noise catches his ear. Not wind, not water. A whisper, distant but clear. The sound of wheels on gravel. Somewhere beyond the gate, another cart approaches, slow and deliberate. The boy grips the wall, his heart tightening. He knows that sound. The story, it seems, is not over. The noise of wheels came slow, deliberate, from beyond the gate. The faint crunch of iron rims on frozen gravel. The guards atop the battlements leaned forward, squinting into the mist that clung to the road. The morning's stillness was broken by that sound alone. One guard raised a hand to shade his eyes, though the sun was weak and cold. "It's a cart," he said. The captain of the watch climbed the stairs, his breath clouding in the chill air. "Who drives it?" "Can't see. Only one mule." They waited, tense, as the cart rolled closer, the sound hollow against the winter silence. When it reached the bridge, they saw the driver, an old man in a rough wool cloak, hood drawn low. Behind him, the cart was covered with burlap. A small flag hung from its side, the seal of the Salt Guild. The captain frowned. "Not again," he muttered. He gave the order, and the portcullis was lowered halfway. The cart stopped before the gate. The old man raised his head slowly. His face was lined, his beard grey, his eyes distant, but something in his expression was calm, unbothered, as though he had expected the suspicion. "What brings you to this gate?" the captain called down. "Delivery," the man replied. His voice carried clear through the fog. "Contract of supply for the lord of this castle. Sealed with the mark of Bristol." The captain hesitated. The mark was indeed visible on the folded parchment the man held aloft. Yet no word had come from Bristol. No order had been sent since the incident. "Wait there," the captain said sharply. He turned to a younger guard. "Fetch the steward's ledger from the lord's chamber. Quickly." When the guard returned, the ledger was opened, its pages crackling in the cold air. The last entry regarding the salt trade bore a faint smear of ink beside the steward's signature, a sign of hurried writing, perhaps the final act before his betrayal. Beneath it, another mark appeared, barely visible under candlelight. A second seal pressed faintly into the parchment, not of the steward's ring, but of the Salt Guild itself. The captain's brow furrowed. "This was no lone theft," he murmured. "Someone higher gave permission." He looked again toward the road. The old man waited patiently, his hands folded on his knees. Behind him, a single blackbird perched on the edge of the cart, unafraid. The captain gave the order to raise the portcullis. When the cart entered, its wheels left clean tracks on the frost-covered ground. The guards closed in around it, spears lowered. The captain approached the driver. "You'll unload in the courtyard. The goods will be inspected." The old man nodded once, wordless. The burlap was pulled back. Inside lay barrels, smaller than before, their lids sealed with wax. The captain pried one open. Instead of salt, he found not white crystals but small parchment rolls bound with string. He lifted one carefully, unrolling it. The script was neat, precise, official. Letters, dozens of them, each stamped with a noble seal from different lands. Cornwall, Kent, even Normandy across the sea. All bearing the same mark at the corner. The crossed keys of the Salt Guild. The captain's stomach tightened. "This isn't trade," he said. "It's correspondence." The old man spoke softly. "For every castle a message. For every lord a warning." "Who sent you?" The man's lips curved faintly. "The ones who deal in silence." The captain ordered him seized, but the old man did not resist. His eyes drifted upward toward the battlements where the boys stood watching. Their gazes met briefly, a flicker of recognition or something stranger. Later, in the great hall, the lord examined the letters by the firelight. His face was pale but steady. The topmost scroll bore his name. He broke the wax and read aloud, his voice low. "To the House of Arden, by decree of the Salt Guild, debts remain unpaid and shipments delayed. Trust broken once demands its own price. You are not beyond reach." The words were written with the calm precision of a merchant's hand, but beneath them pulsed the tone of threat. The lord folded the letter slowly. "So it was not the steward's scheme alone," he said. "It was a network." The captain nodded. "The guild has been moving salt across borders, my lord. Taxless, hidden in barrels, traded for information. The steward may have been one of many." The lord's eyes narrowed. "Information." "Aye," the captain said grimly. "Every letter names a noble, a debt, a secret. Whoever controls the flow of salt controls more than trade. They control truth." For a long while, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then the lord said, "Burn them." The captain hesitated. "My lord." "Burn them," the lord repeated, his voice like stone. "Let no other house learn what was meant for me." The letters were carried to the courtyard and cast into the fire pit. The parchment curled and blackened, ink bleeding like dark veins before turning to ash. The old man watched from where he sat bound, his expression unchanged. When the flames died, The boy approached quietly, standing beside the captain. "Sir," he whispered, "what if the guild comes again?" The captain looked down at him. "They already have." That night the castle lay uneasy. The fires in the hall burned late, the guards doubled their rounds, yet the wind that swept over the walls carried with it the faint scent of the sea, salt and distance and something unknown. In his chamber the lord sat alone, the unburned letter before him. Not one of warning, but another he had found at the bottom of the cart, sealed with no mark at all. When he opened it, a single line stared up at him. "You cannot cleanse stone with fire." He stared at the words long after the candle burned low. Outside, the wind howled softly through the arrow slits, carrying the sound of the tide that had not touched this land in centuries. And in the darkness of the lower halls, where the steward's cell now stood empty, a faint scratching sound began, as if something beneath the stones was shifting, remembering, waiting to rise again. The next dawn came grey and still. Frost clung to the parapets and hung from the narrow slits of stone like glass daggers. A silence pressed against the castle, not peace, but the hush before a revelation. Below, in the dim storehouse where the old man's cart had been emptied, a handful of barrels remained unopened. The captain ordered them inspected one by one. The servants moved cautiously, prying at the wax seals. Inside they found not salt this time, nor letters, but a strange mixture, a fine grayish dust that sparkled faintly in the torchlight. It wasn't salt, sugar, or sand. The steward's replacement, a younger man from York, bent close and touched a pinch to his tongue. "It's ash," he said, frowning, "but mixed with something metallic." The captain took a piece between his fingers, rubbed it, and watched how the grains shimmered like silver when they caught the light. "Smuggler's powder," he muttered. "Used to mark stolen barrels, the guild's sign in the dark." The discovery spread through the hall like a cold wind. The lord ordered that every remaining crate in the cellar be checked, not just the new ones. The servants obeyed, descending into the stone vaults beneath the kitchens, where centuries of trade goods lay stacked in layers of dust. There, under cobwebbed arches, they found older barrels, sealed and forgotten. The air was damp and heavy. The torches flickered, throwing long shadows over the curved ceiling. When one barrel was pried open, the stench of rot filled the room. Inside were bones, small, delicate, human. The captain's face tightened. "Not goods," he said. "Messages." Word reached the lord at once. He descended himself, flanked by 2 guards. When he saw the bones, his hand trembled only slightly. He knelt, studying them. The skulls were small. Perhaps children, perhaps not. One had a scrap of fabric clinging to it, embroidered with the same salt-marked cross. "These were no travelers," the lord whispered. "No merchants." The captain stood beside him. "There's more, my lord." Behind the casks, a tunnel sealed with stone. Took half a day to break through. The passage beyond smelled of earth and damp. Narrow and low, it descended toward the east wall. The men followed with lanterns, their breaths clouding in the chill. At the end of the passage they found another door, iron, ancient, half buried in soil. The lock was corroded but still intact. The captain forced it open with his sword hilt. Inside lay a small chamber, perfectly dry. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of white crystals and scrolls wrapped in oilcloth. The lord stepped forward. He lifted a jar, turned it in his hands. "Salt," he murmured. "Real salt. Pure." The captain scanned the scrolls. The writing was not English but Latin. Trade records, contracts, lists of noble names. Each page bore a date, stretching back over 100 years. "My lord," the captain said quietly, "this castle was part of the network long before you inherited it." The lord's eyes darkened. He brushed the dust from one scroll and read the name written upon it, Arden. "Then it is in our blood," he said bitterly. "My forefathers dealt in more than grain and wool. They dealt in control." The scrolls revealed a system older than any written law. The secret web of salt, moving from coast to castle, from noble hand to humble bowl. In the days when money was scarce and trust scarcer, salt was power. It preserved meat, it cured wounds, it paid soldiers. Armies marched not on coin but on the promise of salt. And those who managed its routes, the guilds, the lords, and the shadow men between, ruled unseen. The old man, still bound in the guardroom, had not spoken since his arrest. But when the captain returned to question him again, he found him awake, eyes sharp, as though he had heard everything through the stone. "You've seen the cellar," the old man said softly. "Now you understand." "Understand what?" "That every grain of salt once passed through a hand that never wrote its name." The captain frowned. "You speak in riddles." "Do I?" The old man smiled faintly. "Your lord believes his house stands apart. But it stands on the same ground as the rest. The bones of those who mined the salt died for it and were buried beneath it." The captain's voice hardened. "You serve the guild." "I serve truth," the man replied. "And truth tastes like salt. Bitter, pure, necessary. You cannot live without it, but it burns every wound it touches." He looked toward the window slit, where pale light streamed through. "They will come for the letters you burned. You think you destroyed them, but every letter was copied before it left the city. The guild remembers." The captain stepped closer. "Why warn us?" "Because," said the old man, "this castle was once their crown, and now they want it back." That night, snow began to fall. It dusted the courtyard white, covered the burn marks of the letters, and settled softly over the parapets. But in the morning, the tracks of several horses were found leading away from the east gate, though no one had seen them leave. The Lord watched from his tower as the sun rose over the frozen fields. Beyond them, faint in the distance, a line of riders moved along the horizon, cloaked figures, each bearing the same black flag marked with the crossed keys. "They've come," he murmured. "The guild has come to collect its debt." And down in the kitchens, as the servants prepared the morning meal, they found that the barrels of flour had been tampered with, the tops replaced, the inside dusted not with grain, but with salt. A silent warning that the walls were no longer impenetrable, that someone within had already chosen their side. The bells tolled softly that morning, not for prayer, but for inspection. Every storeroom, every passage, every chest was to be searched. The Lord's command echoed through the stone corridors like a warning drum. Servants carried torches into places long forgotten, under stairwells behind tapestries, even inside the hollow walls where the wind sometimes whispered like distant voices. The castle, once a stronghold of order, now seemed to breathe with suspicion. Every creak of timber sounded like a secret. Every whisper became an accusation. In the great hall, the long table stood bare. The morning bread was late. When the cook arrived at last, she carried a tray of coarse brown loaves. "My lord," she said, bowing low, "the white flour has spoiled. It smells of the sea." The Lord took one loaf, tore it open, and smelled it himself. The faint scent of brine clung to the crust. His face darkened. "It's salt," he said. "They've mixed it into our stores." The captain leaned closer. "To poison us?" "No," the Lord replied. "To remind us." Outside, snow continued to fall, layering the courtyard in silence. The world seemed frozen, but beneath the frost, the slow pulse of something unseen continued. A rhythm of trade, of messages, of silent riders who moved from town to town under the mark of the crossed keys. That afternoon, a messenger from the nearest abbey arrived. His robes heavy with snow, his face drawn and pale. He carried a sealed letter wrapped in waxed cloth. The seal was foreign, bearing not the guild's mark but the papal crest. The Lord broke it open with trembling fingers. Inside, in Latin script, were the words that chilled the hall. "The Salt Guild, by order of His Holiness, is absolved of accusation. Its service to the Holy See is known and sanctioned. You will not interfere with its work." The hall fell silent. Even the fire seemed to hesitate. The captain stepped forward. "They have the church behind them." The Lord folded the letter slowly. "No, Captain. They have something the church needs. Salt. Power, the Lord said bitterly. The church blesses bread and salt at every table, and yet cannot make either. The guild gives them both. And in return, silence. He turned toward the window, watching the snow swirl against the stone. Do you know why salt was once called the white gold? Because it bought loyalty. And loyalty, once bought, is never given freely again. That night, the captain gathered his most trusted men. They met in the guardroom, the fire dim. Maps lay spread on the table. Trade routes, river paths, merchant roads marked with small stones. These are the guild's arteries, he said. From Bristol to Rouen, from the salt pans of Normandy to the hills of York. Every shipment, every barrel, moves under their eye. One soldier pointed to the map's edge. And this mark here. A monastery, the captain said, where they refine salt with ash and clay. Purer than anything mined by peasants. The church protects it. The guild controls it. Another guard frowned. Then how do we fight what we can't accuse? The captain didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the old man's cell beyond the door. The prisoner hadn't spoken since the last interrogation, yet his calm remained unbroken, as if he were waiting for something inevitable. When the captain entered the cell, the old man smiled faintly. You've read the letter then? You knew, the captain said. I've always known. The guild was born of the church's hunger, for preservation, for purity, for profit. You speak of sin in holy walls. The old man chuckled softly. Sin? Well, only necessity. When pilgrims marched to Jerusalem, who salted their meat? When kings buried their dead, who paid the miners who cut the salt from the earth? The guild did. Always the guild. He leaned forward. We are older than your lords, older than your kings. Even the sea remembers us. The captain's voice dropped. And what of the bones we found beneath this castle? What of those who vanished for this trade? The old man's smile faded. Collateral, the price of continuity. You think history is made of battles? Well, it is made of ledgers. The captain turned away, disturbed. You call death an entry in a ledger. The man's whisper followed him. It always has been. Later that evening, as the captain walked the ramparts, he saw torches moving in the forest beyond the walls. Dozens, maybe more, flickering points of orange in the black trees. He raised his spyglass. Through the swirling snow, faint banners could be seen, the crossed keys of the guild. They're not hiding anymore, he murmured. By dawn, riders appeared at the gate bearing the guild's insignia. They brought not swords but scrolls, papers of demand, contracts sealed by abbots and bishops. One rider dismounted, bowed, and presented a parchment. By order of the church and the Guild of Salt, he declared, the castle of Arden is to resume its trade under proper tithe. Refusal will be seen as rebellion. The Lord said nothing. His gaze was fixed on the man's cloak, finely woven, lined with fur, far beyond a merchant's means. The mark on the clasp was one he recognized. Where did you get that cloak? He asked quietly. The rider smiled. From your steward, my lord. The air left the room like breath from a wound. The steward, the traitor thought long dead, was alive, serving the guild. He rides with the caravan now, the messenger said, his tone light. He speaks highly of you. The lord stepped closer, his voice cold. Tell him the debt is not forgotten. The messenger bowed again, the faint smile never leaving his lips. Nor is the salt. When the gates closed behind them, the lord turned to the captain. We are surrounded, captain. Not by walls, but by agreements. The captain's jaw clenched. Then perhaps it's time to break one. The next few days passed like a dream that refused to end. No trumpet of war sounded. No army camped at the gate. Yet, inside the castle, the battle had already begun. It started quietly, with the bread. One morning, the cook wept at her table, the dough heavy and grey in her hands. The flour, once white and soft, was now coarse, smelling faintly of the sea. I swear it wasn't like this yesterday, she whispered. I kept it locked in the storeroom. The captain examined the sacks. All bore the same seal, the crossed keys of the guild. The servants had thought it a mark of quality. Now it was a warning. The Lord ordered the kitchens under watch. Every meal was to be tasted before it reached his table. But even that could not stop the unease. The servants whispered that the guild could reach anyone, even through the salt on their tongues. At night, torches flickered in the lower corridors as guards moved in pairs, searching for intruders. They found no one, only faint traces of movement. A dropped glove, a footprint in the ash near the cellar door. A candle burned to its base with no one to claim it. In the chapel, the priest prayed louder than before, his voice echoing through the narrow vault. Yet even he seemed changed. His sermons were full of strange phrases. The salt of the covenant, the purity of preservation. Some began to wonder whose side he was truly on. The castle's heartbeat had become irregular, half faith, half fear. Then came the night of the poisoned cask. It was found by a stable boy who noticed a strange smell rising from one of the wine barrels. When the captain pried it open, a thick crust of white crystals floated on the surface. He dipped a finger, tasted it cautiously, then spat it out. "It's not salt," he said. "It's lime." The Lord was silent for a long moment. Then quietly he said, "They're not sending messages anymore. They're sending warnings." The next day he summoned every servant, every guard, every scribe to the great hall. The torches burned high, their flames dancing along the banners. The Lord stood before them, his face pale but steady. "Listen well," he said. "This castle is no longer ours. It belongs to those who trade in silence. The guild has marked our walls, our stores, our food. But they cannot mark our hearts unless we allow it. From this hour, nothing enters these gates without my word. No salt, no letter, no priest's blessing. We are to live by our own bread, and not by theirs." A murmur ran through the hall. Fear, defiance, hunger all tangled together. The old man in the dungeon smiled when he heard of the decree. "You'll starve before the month ends," he said softly to the captain. "Salt keeps food from rotting. Without it, you'll lose more than your taste." The captain ignored him, but his words lingered. He knew the truth of it. Already the meat in the larders had begun to spoil. The air in the kitchens grew heavy with the stench of decay. And yet no one dared fetch salt. The guild's shadow spread even without their presence. In the nearby villages, merchants vanished. Caravans turned away from the road to Arden. The markets whispered that the castle was cursed. Then, one morning, the boy who had once found the hidden letters came running breathless to the captain. "They're here," he gasped. Outside the eastern wall, a line of wagons had appeared, bearing the Salt Guild's banner. But these were no soldiers. They were merchants, priests, even women with baskets of goods. Peaceful, harmless. The Lord watched from the tower. "They come not with swords," he said. "They come with necessity." By dusk, the smell of salt filled the air again, rich and familiar, seeping through the cracks of the gates as if the earth itself had surrendered. The merchants offered trade, blessing, and forgiveness. The priest from the abbey came with them, bearing holy water and words of reconciliation. But the captain noticed something else. Among the merchants were faces he recognized. Castle servants who had vanished days ago, now returned with the guild's insignia stitched into their cloaks. Traitors, or survivors. The Lord refused to open the gates. His command was clear. Let them wait. Let them thirst. By midnight, the snow had stopped, and silence returned. But when morning came, the wagons were gone. Only one thing remained. A single barrel at the gate, sealed and marked with the guild's crossed keys. The captain had it brought inside under guard. When they pried it open, it was filled not with salt, but with pure white sand. At the top lay a folded parchment. The Lord unfolded it. The ink was black, the script elegant. "We have taken nothing you did not sell. Salt returns to the sea, and secrets return to us. Do not fight preservation. You will only decay." The Lord stared at the words until his eyes blurred. Then he turned to the captain and said quietly, "We're not fighting merchants. We're fighting memory itself." That night, as the torches burned low, the castle felt older, not merely in stone but in spirit. Every hall seemed to remember a past trade, a buried oath, a bargain written in salt. The walls, once symbols of strength, now seemed to breathe like a living thing, weary from centuries of secrecy. The boy who had first seen the guild's letters lay awake in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling. He thought of the cart, the barrels, the old man's eyes, the white dust on his hands. And for the first time, he wondered if the salt itself was cursed, or if it was simply honest, showing what men truly were when stripped of sweetness. Outside, the moonlight touched the ramparts, pale and cold. In the dungeon below, the old man began to hum, a low, rhythmic sound like the tide against stone. It was not a song, it was a memory. The castle awoke the next morning to a hunger it had not known in decades. The storerooms, once full of flour, grains, salted meat, and preserved vegetables, now offered only the remnants of yesterday's rations. Bread was coarse, grey, and dry. Meat had begun to smell faintly sour despite the cold of winter. Servants moved quietly through the halls, their eyes wary. The kitchens were filled with low murmurs, complaints, prayers, whispered fears. The cook tried to make soup from the last handfuls of barley and root vegetables. The water simmered thin, flavorless, and the smell of burning wood overpowered it. Even the Lord's chamber carried the faint scent of decay. The boy, who had long been watchful of the castle's secrets, now moved from hall to hall, carrying water, stirring gruel, watching faces grow pale and tight with worry. Each servant seemed to age in days what should have taken months. Their hands shook as they carried trays, and their voices were hushed as though the walls themselves were listening. By mid-morning, the Lord assembled his council in the great hall. His face was gaunt, pale against the dark stone, but his eyes were steady. The captain, the cook, the steward's replacement, and a handful of trusted men stood before him. "We are starving, my lord," the cook said softly, her voice quivering. "Even with the fires burning, nothing will keep food safe. The salt, it is gone." The Lord nodded. "I know. The guild controls the trade. They have cut off our supply, but they have not cut off our understanding." "What understanding?" the captain asked. "Of what we truly guard," the Lord said. He rose from his seat and moved toward the open window, looking out across the snow-covered courtyard. "Walls and towers are stone. Soldiers are flesh. Bread is only bread if it is salted. We have been reminded that nothing we possess, not granaries, not gold, not loyalty, matters unless we understand the value of what is unseen." The captain frowned. "And what of the guild? They control the rivers, the roads, the abbeys. Even the priests bend to their power. They are older than kings," the Lord said quietly. "Older than the walls of Arden. Their power is not in arms, but in memory, in the knowledge that salt, once buried or stolen, can preserve or destroy." Below the battlements, the servants whispered of famine and betrayal. Some claimed they saw figures moving through the snow beyond the gate, cloaked riders who left no tracks and vanished before dawn. Others swore they saw torches flicker in the forest, lights that could not belong to any known caravan. The boy walking past the kitchens paused. He saw the cook press her face to a window, eyes searching. "Do you see them?" he asked softly. "Who?" she said. "The riders. The guild." She shook her head. "I see nothing. Only snow. Only frost. Only hunger." And yet the hunger grew. Barrels emptied faster than expected. Water froze in the troughs. Even the livestock seemed to sense the shift, restless and quiet. By nightfall, the castle's silence was filled only with the coughs of those too weak to work, the groan of timber under snow, and the distant howl of wolves on the hills. In the chapel, the priest prayed fervently. Candlelight flickered across the walls, illuminating the faint salt stains on the floor, remnants of a shipment long forgotten, spilled by careless hands months ago. The boy knelt at the back, listening. The priest spoke of miracles, of mercy, of the Lord's provision. Yet in the stillness, a faint whisper seemed to answer. Not divine, but ancient. Preserve. Remember. The boy shivered. He understood the meaning without words. The guild, the salt, the walls of Arden. It was all part of a cycle older than any man in the hall. Life within the castle depended not only on flesh and labor, but on the flow of what men often took for granted. White crystals that could preserve life or command fear. That night, the Lord walked alone along the ramparts. The snow had settled into a thick blanket, muffling the sound of the world. Below, the courtyard lay empty, save for the pale outline of barrels once filled with salt. He knelt briefly at the edge of the parapet, tracing his fingers across the frozen stones. "They remember," he whispered to the wind. "They remember every barrel, every grain, every debt." And as he rose, he noticed something strange. Faint, almost imperceptible marks in the snow. Not hoof prints, not boot prints. Lines etched like a map, winding from the forest toward the castle walls, disappearing just before reaching the gate. The boy found him there at dawn. "My lord," he said, voice trembling. "The snow, it moves." The lord did not turn. "No, boy," he said softly, eyes on the horizon. "We move. And the salt remembers. Always." Below, in the dungeons, the old man hummed again. Low, steady, like water carving stone. The melody carried through the walls, through the empty corridors, and into the hearts of those awake in the castle. A warning. Reminder. Promise. Outside, beyond the walls, the wind shifted. The trees groaned under the weight of snow, and the faintest glimmer of movement appeared. Shadows flitting across the white. Riders returning. Or perhaps something older. The castle waited. The days that followed were slow, measured by the ticking of the great clock in the tower, whose hands seemed to move more deliberately than the sun. Every morning, the castle awoke to the same silence, broken only by the wind rattling the arrow slits or the faint groan of frozen timber. The hunger had become routine, the uncertainty more oppressive than the cold. Inside the walls, trust was a fragile thing. The steward's replacement, once loyal, now moved with caution, glancing over his shoulder as though even the boy might betray him. The cook kept her head down, stirring the grey, heavy porridge with trembling hands. Even the priest's prayers carried an edge of suspicion, as though every word spoken might be overheard and recorded for unseen masters. The Lord convened his council again, but this time the tension was tangible. The captain leaned over the map of the region, tracing the lines of the old trade routes, the rivers and roads the guild controlled. "They can reach any castle in a week," he said, voice low. "Any noble who defies them becomes inconvenient. And yet they have not attacked," the Lord replied. "Their weapon is fear, not fire." The boy spoke up, quiet but insistent. "My lord, I saw the marks in the snow again. Lines, patterns. They lead toward the old watchtower on the eastern ridge. Perhaps they are signaling, or waiting." The captain frowned. "Or spying. Every servant, every scribe could be reporting back." The Lord nodded, eyes dark. "Then we must assume the walls themselves have ears. Every corridor, every arch, every stone could hide a traitor. But we will endure. The castle endures." That night, the first direct breach of secrecy occurred. A servant, one trusted with the pantry keys, was found rifling through the last of the flour sacks. The boy discovered him, frozen in guilt and fear, a small vial of the guild's ash powder clutched in his hands. I only followed orders," the servant stammered. "They said to mark the stores, to warn, nothing more." The Lord's gaze was steady, but the weight of judgment hung heavy. "Orders from whom?" The servant shook his head. "I do not know. Writer. Glow. He spoke only in whispers and left the powder. The Lord's jaw tightened. He turned to the captain. "Seal the kitchens. No one enters without 2 witnesses. Every grain must be accounted for. Every barrel counted. The guild's reach may be unseen, but it is not infinite. Yet, despite precautions, The presence of the guild was felt everywhere. At night, soft knocks echoed in the hallways. At dawn, footprints appeared on the walls themselves, faint traces of someone walking along ledges no man should traverse. The boy tried to follow, but each time, the path vanished as if swallowed by the stone. Even alliances fractured under the pressure. A neighboring lord, once a steadfast friend, sent a letter suggesting cooperation with the guild, offering to share Arden's trade for protection. The Lord of Arden burned the letter in the hearth, watching the flames consume the ink. "We will not bend," he whispered. "Not yet." The snow had thawed slightly, but the forest remained treacherous. Tracks of unknown riders snaked toward the castle, leaving only hints of movement. The boy reported another sighting, a figure standing atop the ridge, unmoving, watching. The captain and a small patrol rode out at dawn, but found nothing. Only the wind, carrying the faint scent of salt and ash, and the distant rhythmic hum of the old man in his cell. Inside, the castle became a maze of suspicion. Every corridor, every door, every stairwell could conceal a spy. Servants watched one another. Whispers became accusations. Glances carried meaning. Even the walls, carved from centuries of stone, seemed to hold secrets in the mortar itself. One evening, as the lord walked the ramparts, the boy approached him quietly. "They are patient," the boy said. "The guild does not need to strike. It only waits." The lord nodded. "Patience is the oldest weapon in the world. And so is memory. They count on the forgotten debts of men, the promises buried in stone and ledger." Below in the dungeon, the old man hummed, soft and deliberate. The melody carried through the walls, like water running beneath the castle foundations. The captain recognized it now. It was the same tune as before, but layered with variation, as though it encoded instructions, a map, or perhaps a warning. By nightfall, the castle had settled into an uneasy rhythm. Guards patrolled, meals were rationed, and whispers circulated like the wind through the halls. The boy lay awake, listening to the soft hum and imagining the guild's network. Riders crossing hills, letters sealed with ash, merchants bearing salt in barrels, secrets preserved in white crystals. And all the while, the old man waited, a patient observer of the unseen war, a living ledger of centuries of trade and loyalty. The castle seemed poised on the edge of something greater than hunger, greater than fear. The guild's reach was near, but its intentions remained obscured. And as the Lord of Arden watched the horizon, he understood that the coming days would test not only walls and men but memory, patience, and the unseen threads that bound them all together. The snow fell once more, gentle at first, then thicker, wrapping the castle in white. In the silent night, the faint marks in the snow began to reappear, traces of the guild moving, unseen, patient, waiting for the hour when history and salt would demand their reckoning. The castle had grown quiet, but the silence was not peace. The fires in the great hall burned low, casting shadows that stretched along the stone walls like fingers. Outside, snow lay thick, softening the edges of the courtyard, muffling footsteps, hiding secrets. Within the walls, every breath seemed heavier, every movement slower, as if time itself hesitated in Arden. The Lord walked along the battlements, the boy beside him. Together they watched the distant horizon, where the faint glimmer of torchlight hinted at movement. The guild was near, though no sound betrayed their approach. The wind carried a subtle scent, salt, ash, and earth. The old roads, rivers, and forests that had carried barrels and letters for decades now carried shadows of men whose names were unrecorded, whose loyalty was invisible. Inside, the captain made his rounds, inspecting the stores, the barrels, the frozen meat. Every grain was counted, every sack recorded. Even in vigilance, unease lingered. He paused at the kitchen door, noticing that a single window was slightly ajar, though none had opened it. A faint line of snow drifted across the floor, untouched yet unnatural, like a message in white. The old man hummed below, in the dungeon. The sound carried through the castle, soft, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. It was a reminder that the castle itself was alive with memory. Every stone had seen centuries of trade, of betrayal, of hunger and of power, and it remembered. The boy listened from above, feeling the hum through the floorboards, imagining the flow of salt across lands, the unseen hands that moved it, the lives counted and lost in ledgers that never spoke aloud. The Lord returned to his chambers, the captain and the boy following. He sat at the table, eyes on the map of trade routes and rivers, each line etched like a vein of blood through the country. He considered the past days, the vanished servants, the ash-marked flour, the letters burned and copied. He considered the guild, the church, the old man, and the invisible web that had reached into Arden. "They may come with soldiers," the captain said softly, "or they may come in silence. Either way, we are not safe." "No," the Lord replied, his voice calm, steady. "We are never safe. But we endure. Arden has endured for centuries, and it will endure still. If not by force, then by patience. If not by strength, then by knowledge." The boy, seated near the window, looked out at the forest. There, in the moonlight, shapes moved that could have been men, could have been animals, could have been the wind given form. He shivered, sensing the guild's presence, feeling the pulse of unseen power stretching across the land. Hours passed. The snow drifted, the castle settled, the torches flickered. And then, a soft knock echoed through the stone corridors. Deliberate, measured. Not the sound of a servant, not of wind, not of falling snow. A knock repeating, insistent. The captain drew his sword, stepping toward the door. The boy followed, heart pounding. The Lord rose, walking slowly, hands clasped behind his back. Outside, the snow glimmered in the torchlight, pure and untouched, yet something stirred beneath it. The castle held its breath. When the door opened, there was nothing. Only the faint glimmer of white crystal scattered across the threshold, sparkling in the firelight. Salt. No letter, no rider, no voice. Only salt, fallen like a silent warning. The Lord picked up a handful, letting it sift through his fingers. "They are here," he whispered. "Not in body but in mind. Not in force but in memory. We are being measured, our patience tested." The captain looked toward the boy. "What do we do?" The boy smiled faintly, his voice barely above a whisper. "We wait. And we remember. Just as they do." The old man hummed from below, soft and steady, like waves rolling over stones. It was neither a warning nor reassurance, only the constant, ancient pulse of the castle and its secrets. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of sea and salt, drifting through the windows and corridors, settling over the castle like a soft, cold blanket. And in the distance, beyond the walls, movement stirred again. A shadow rising from the forest, a rider unseen yet watching. The castle, frozen in snow and silence, held its breath. Now close your eyes. Feel the cold stone beneath your fingers, the weight of centuries in the walls. Hear the soft hum of memory, of whispers in the corridors, of salt shifting in barrels long forgotten. Take a deep breath. The wind carries the scent of sea and ash. Imagine the snow drifting across the battlements, settling quietly over the world. Every creak of timber, every flicker of torchlight, every shadow moving just beyond the gates is part of the story the castle remembers. And as you breathe out slowly, know that Arden waits, patient as the guild, silent as the stone, enduring, and that somewhere just beyond sight the next chapter begins.